Welcome to the Cell, everybody. Cool conversations with the most amazing salespeople I can find.
Everybody, welcome back to The Cell. I always say that this is the podcast that talks to the coolest salespeople on the planet. But we have Matt Ward on, but he told me something that makes him not cool. I asked him, is it Matt or Matthew? And he said, well, his mum calls you Matthew. So you can't be cool if we're using your mum's name. So I'll have to call you Matt. How are you doing today?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I am all right. Thank you very much. I am good. Before we start, well, as we start, are they maps in the background? I have you on video. And what are those pictures?
So this is really cool. Something my wife got. It's kind of like like a a carving out of wood of different cities around the world. This one here, I mean, you probably won't be able to see it from your camera, but this one is New York, where
I
my
can
wife
tell
lived
that.
for many years. Yeah.
Amazing.
This one is Singapore,
Of
right?
course.
This one is Wellington, which is my hometown in New Zealand. And there's another
Wow.
one down the end which you can't see, which is Vancouver, where my wife grew up. So she was born in Malaysia, but grew up in Vancouver, spent years in New York. So kind of each of the kind of like the core cities where we sort of have a bit of story of our life. We have these sort of these really cool kind of like carved wood things of the city. Yeah.
Well, for people who are on audio, you can't see them. They look beautiful. And I love maps. And, I always say that sales is storytelling. And there's nothing more I mean, that's your whole story there, isn't
There you
it?
go. Yeah.
When were you
Yeah.
living in New York? When did you live in New York?
Oh no, so my wife lived in New York. I mean, just on the story. So I, again, grew up in New Zealand, born and bred in Wellington, New Zealand. I was supposed to go to university and do a marketing degree, but in the summer holidays between leaving high school and getting ready to go to university, I answered a job in the newspaper back in those days when it was newspapers, for a door-to-door sales role. And I thought, well, hey, look, that's a way to make some cash. And so I started doing door-to-door sales for a multi-level marketing company in New Zealand,
Oh my
commission
God.
only, $10 a sale. And if anyone's been to Wellington, you'll know it's called the Windy City. It's built on the side of hills, pretty much. The weather is incredibly changeable. So when I talk about door-to-door sales in Wellington, I mean, it's going up 100 steps to get to every front door, often in the howling wind and rain, for $10 commission, right? So and that's kind of where I cut my teeth and really learned how to sell, knocking on doors.
Isn't
Um,
it, Matt, just to ask you on that, I mean, I would recommend everybody to do that. Not because it's fun in the moment, but that teaches you how to just grit your teeth and sell, doesn't it?
It's honestly, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, I ended up doing it for 2 years. It was a multi-level marketing company, and so the idea was to do it for a few months. And I did pretty well. I was pretty good at sales just naturally. Always had been. My kids, my parents always tell stories about when in school we were doing charity fundraisers, and I would always raise or sell 10 times as much as the next person, even from the age of like 8 years old. Um, so I did quite well at it, and given it being a multi-level marketing company, they were like, "Wow, you start putting people underneath me," and I was running a team, and they said you'll be a millionaire in a year, and so I kind of got caught up in the whole basically pyramid scheme.
Sure.
And I ended up deciding not to go to university and pursuing this for the sake of experience. So I did it for 2 years, and in those 2 years, the lessons that you learn, not just in sales, but just in general in life, were huge. I mean, I learned not just how to knock on the front door of somebody's house at 7 p.m. when they're sitting down for dinner and try to grab their attention, try to read body language, try to read tone of voice, adjust your approach in a split second to make sure you can capture their attention, get a hook going, get the narrative of the story going, and walk off their doorstep 10 minutes later with $30 in your hand. Um, but you learn tenacity, you learn maintaining a positive attitude, you learn how to motivate others when they are struggling, and because I was running a team. So all these things that you learn just into the work ethic, discipline, grit, going through the ups and downs of having those moments where you sit on the curb and you go, what the hell am I doing? I've been knocking on doors for 5 hours and haven't made a single sale. So you learn the numbers game, you learn the law of averages, you learn everything. And I think it's a lot of the lessons I took from that 2 years. have really been the foundation of everything I've done as a startup founder as well.
And
So
well, look, we'll get on from this in a minute, but it's, considering we're on a sales podcast and we're talking about the
that's why I thought
absolute,
I would tell that story. Yeah,
of
yeah.
course, of course. Can I ask, what were you selling?
So basically, it was essentially the pre-internet version of the Groupon. So you spent $30 to buy like a VIP card for a local Italian restaurant or a local video store
Oh,
or delivery pizza shop, and you would get 2 for 1, or you'd get discounts for a 6-month period. We also had a period selling cable TV, so Sky TV in New Zealand. We had a deal to sell them, things like that. So that was, it was a variety, but primarily it was these promotional VIP cards.
I mean, look, I mean, these are, sometimes door-to-door salespeople get, what I sold was life insurance door-to-door, which,
Yeah.
nobody loves, but everybody needs. What you're selling, it's actually a good product, even though people crap on door-to-door salespeople. Oh, you suck. You were actually selling, if somebody ate a lot of Italian food, this was probably a good deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were some funny stories. I'm not necessarily proud of it now in my old age, but um, I remember selling a 2 for 1 pizza discount card to a lady who was allergic to cheese. I sold a 2 for 1 video rental discount coupon to a older lady. I didn't say old lady, but older lady who didn't even own a TV or a video player. And I managed to convince her that, when her grandkids came to visit, it'd be a great activity, and the video store could rent her a video player. So I mean, there's lots of stuff like that. But yeah, it was.
It's well, considering we should move on for this period when you were selling old ladies stuff they may or may not have needed. So what came after that?
So yeah, so then after being like a lot of people do in New Zealand, you want to go and spend a couple of you want to go traveling because we're in the middle of the bottom end of the world. So I left New Zealand after that 2 years to go to the UK. My mum is English, so I've got a British passport. So I said, hey, I'll go to the UK and travel Europe for a year, and then I'll come back and then I'll do my degree. So I went to the UK, got a job while I was there doing telesales for a training company. So I was selling like training courses, B2B telesales. Um, Stayed there for about a year and a half, and then was going back to New Zealand. And a friend of mine who I knew from door-to-door sales, we used to knock on doors together. He had moved to Japan, and we were emailing, and he was like, "Oh, you should come via Tokyo on your way back to New Zealand, and come and visit." So I was like, "Okay, why not?" I either had to go through Singapore, Bangkok, or Tokyo. I thought, why not? Went there for a week. When I was there, he said, "You should come and work for me. I'm working in this IT consulting company." And it was 6 months until university started. So I was like, hey, I'll do it for 6 months. And I got like a 6-month working holiday visa, just fell in love with life in Japan and ended up staying 4 years. Um, running sales for so I was selling IT services into investment banks and international law firms. So I didn't need to speak Japanese for the job. Um, so I was sold that for 4 years. After that, I kind of realized that I had a real ceiling to my career there, not being Japanese and not being a Japanese speaker. I couldn't really grow much. And I'd met somebody in Tokyo who had a tech startup out of San Francisco. And I said to him, I'm going back to New Zealand. He said, well, I'm trying to open an office in Australia. How about you go to Sydney and open my company in Australia for me? And that was kind of my first foray into starting businesses rather than just driving sales teams.
I get a
And so I
feeling.
ended up,
I was going to
huh?
say, Matt. I get a feeling this story ends up that university degree gets pushed off into the distance, and
Never had it, never
real
done it,
life happens,
never done
right?
it. Exactly. And I still haven't done it. It's still on the to-do list. Um, but yeah, so then I went to Australia, spent a couple of years in Australia building this technology company that did automated language translation for complex user manuals and documents. I hated it, didn't really enjoy it. And
Can
then
I ask,
that's,
Matt?
yeah,
Can I ask why you hated it? Because it's an interesting thing. When I did door-to-door sales, I actually quite liked it, even though I didn't love getting told to fuck off if somebody was angry, and even though I didn't love, as you say, 5 hours of it.
yeah,
There was a group of guys. We laughed. We had fun.
yeah.
I quite liked it. What was it about? Because you didn't say that. I noticed as you talked about multi-level marketing, you say you learned a lot and you love Tokyo. What was it about this job, the language? Because I'm always interested in that. A
Yeah.
job's a job in regard. What was it that made you not like it?
So I think I didn't have any I didn't know anyone in Sydney. So when I landed, I had no friends, no network, no nothing.
Okay.
And
Yep.
being the first person on the ground to set up this business, I was working from home. So
Yep.
literally, I'm the kind of person that really thrives when I'm working in a team and I'm working with people face to face every
Yes.
day. I feed
Yep.
off that. And so I think I was sitting at home on a desk going, right, how do I launch this company? And I was doing cold calling and trying to set up meetings, but it was a very lonely thing.
Yeah, I get that.
The other thing that I found very challenging about this language translation software is that I learned pretty quickly that language is subjective. That we could actually get the document translated that one person would say was done perfectly, um, but the other person, like stylistically, it's subjective. I mean, the other person would say, "Oh no, I would translate that differently." So you'd often do a project for a company, and the manager would say, "Oh, I got my next door neighbor who speaks a bit of Vietnamese to read it, and she said it doesn't make sense." Right. And so the point was, I found it a very thankless job. You never had a,
Yeah,
it
right.
was, everyone always said, oh, that wasn't quite what I wanted. So yeah, I just didn't really enjoy it.
Fair enough.
Was really the underlying thing. But then, yeah, another friend of mine, same guy who I ended up working for in Japan, he gave me a call, and he said, "Hey, Wardy, I'm now living in Bangkok, and I've started this digital marketing company, and we need somebody to come and drive sales for us, um, out of Singapore." And I flew up to Bangkok to meet him and his co-founders, and just the energy, the vibe, just I was like, oh man, I got to be a part of this. So I ended up leaving Australia, coming to Singapore in January 2007. So I've been here going on 19 years now, almost 19 years.
Is this AdMax?
And
Is this
this was
is this
AdMax,
AdMax?
correct?
Okay.
Yeah, so I came up here to help build that. That was a digital marketing, basically an online advertising business. This was back in the day even in 2007, where it was still very much dominated by print advertising, and the
Oh,
online
you're very
marketing was
early.
just all, yeah,
Very
it was all
early.
going
I used
into
to be
maybe
in.
the Straits Times or MediaCorp or
Yeah.
MSN or even Yahoo, and that was kind of the where the ad
I
budgets went.
was
Yeah.
just before that time. I was selling advertising in print, and I joined a company. And I remember even like early 2000s, we had this. I still remember today. We had this like strategy meeting. I was the sales guy. I wasn't strategy, and we were selling print ads. Somebody said, "What do you think we should start selling it online?" And I still remember there was this general feeling of which I joined in. Said, "No, come on, it's not going to go online. No one's going to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's going to stay print." And I really remember we were all, "Yep, that's the right decision. Yep, don't go digital." Jesus Christ. So you did good.
Yeah.
Like even 2007, obviously it was growing by then, but it wasn't by any means obvious then, was it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was obvious to people who were seeing what was happening globally, but in this region,
Yeah.
it wasn't. You're still very much traditional thinking around branding and advertising. So that was really interesting. So my friend had started essentially their business was an agency. It was a digital agency, and they
Yep.
had this idea to build this ad network, which was, basically the first version of a Google display network, right? Where you'd give us the budget, and our system would distribute it across multiple websites, right? Um, and so I came on as like the number three hire for that business to run sales. After after a year or so, I took over as CEO of that business. We raised I think it was about 11, 12 million US in venture capital. We had 120 staff across 6 countries, so Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and ended up getting acquired in 2012 to an Indian company that had the same kind of product as us, but they had raised a bunch of capital, wanted to expand out of India. They came in, bought AdMax. That was in 2012.
How was that?
Yeah.
So just to ask, obviously I've, 10 years as an entrepreneur, everyone talks about an exit. How was that experience? Because you've done what I would call real sales, going out, hitting the phone, selling. But then selling a company is completely different. It's not like you're going door to door. Hello, do you want to buy my company? Hello, do you want to buy my company? It's long, it's complex. I would love to hear about that the exit. You
It's
exited
really
as well.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's the hardest thing to do, and the craziest thing I think that when you first go through it, when you're talking to companies that have piles and piles of cash, right, and they are negotiating over literally a couple of 100,000 here or there, whether it's, a 20 million or a 20.5 million. And you're kind of going, come on, dude, just, it doesn't make any difference to you. You've got a billion in the bank. But you realize that, every last dollar is negotiated, and it's the hardest thing to do. I think, you see these stories in the press about people getting exits, but you realize how challenging it actually is to sell a company.
Yeah.
You've got to have like it's all about like so much of it is timing.
Yeah.
So much of it is timing. With AdMax, right? We were the largest online ad network in Southeast Asia at the time. But
Okay.
what happened was we saw the market changing. We started to see programmatic advertising getting traction, where it wasn't just about buying an ad network now. There was these things called demand side platforms or DSPs coming in, where it was essentially using machine learning and algorithms to automatically trade your ad inventory. And that's how it's all done today, right? But we saw this changing around 2010, 2011. And we went, okay, if we're with programmatic coming in, this is really going to like lessen the moat, the defensive moat we have as a local player, because these players are now coming in from the US and Europe with these, significantly bigger war chests, much better technology than us. And we're going to either need to raise a ton of money to try to compete with global players, which you just couldn't do in this region at the time because the venture capital market was still very nascent, right?
There was no VC back
Or get out now before it's too late. And so we basically took that gamble, and we sold. Many people thought we sold early, and I think we could have carried on, but I still think realistically, if we had carried on, we probably would have died because the market was changing and we didn't have the capital to compete. So we sold, I think, just at the right time before things really turned. And funnily enough, if you look back at that market of our 4 or 5 local competitors in Southeast Asia, we're the only one that managed to get an exit. So I think we sold before the peak, right? But those that hung on to try to get more money ended up not selling.
But honestly, Matt, that take credit for that, because you can look back 10 years later and be like, okay, it was the right thing to sell. But in the moment, to be self-aware enough that, hey, look, we could make more, and right now we're going to try and sell, and as you say, it's not easy, and you could be leaving money on the table. But let's face it, of all the startups that start, how many actually get an exit that's worth more than getting out flat? Very few.
Yep.
So good on you for taking that. Once you took that decision, what was that selling experience like? Did you get lucky and find the right kind of buyers quickly, or did you have to ask?
Oh man, how much time do we have? Like okay, so the exit with AdMax and then also the exit with Workmate were like the stories on their own. I'll try to give how much time do we have? I'll try to give the short version. So with AdMax, this is a crazy story. So we had an offer from a company in the US. It was a global player. They had amazing technology. They were well known. They were hundreds of millions of revenue, and they wanted to come to Asia. So we were going to be their Asia expansion plan. They had reached out to us. We had met with them. We liked them. They liked us. Everything was great. Went through the due diligence. Everything was great. Deal was about to close, and they even had like a big closing party that they had organized. They were going to fly their executive team in, their founder and CEO from the US. They were going to fly all of our staff, 120 staff from all over Southeast Asia to Singapore for a massive event to kind of have this party. The party was supposed to be on the Friday. They were supposed to close and sign like the week before. And literally the day before we were supposed to close, we get a message from them saying, hey guys, there's something going on here at head office. We just need to take care of. We're not going to be able to sign this week. Can you give us another week? And we're like, okay, we'll have to cancel this party. We have to stop everyone's flights and everyone's flying in. And then we didn't hear from them for 2 weeks. Literally silence for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And we're going, oh shit, because at the time also we're burning cash, we're running out of money, the runway's getting shorter, and so we're starting to stress a little bit.
My God.
And ultimately, what happened was they got back in touch with us 2 weeks later, and they said, "Hey, look, sorry for the silence. There's a big announcement coming out tomorrow, but we have decided to acquire MySpace." So these were the guys that ended up partnering up with Justin Timberlake and buying MySpace. So MySpace was owned by Fox. They were trying to, by Rupert Murdoch, they were trying to offload it. They had a deadline to offload it by like the end of June, before the end of the financial year.
What?
So they basically used all their cash to buy that MySpace, right? So they came back and said, we still want to do the deal, but now it's an all stock deal rather than an all cash deal.
What?
And when we looked at their numbers, and our board was like, this isn't like that massively, like they're giving themselves like a 5x on revenue multiple. They're giving us a 2x on revenue multiple. This doesn't make sense. And so our board decided to go and speak to others. So the exclusivity period kind of lapsed. And we went and spoke to others, and that's when the offer came in
What?
from
Oh my.
the guys out of India. And so literally, it was one of those moments where, as a CEO, I was like, we're about to get an exit, we're about to have this massive party, we're about to get paid, well, hey,
Let's
and then,
go.
oh shit, the deal died. And then you're like, oh shit, because we've been like working on months of due diligence for this, and all of a sudden now our runway's short, and now you're thinking, how are we going to survive?
Wow.
Um, so it was a pretty stressful experience, but it was a big learning curve. Um,
You know
and
that
funnily
there's a
enough, a very
phrase.
similar thing happened with Workmate when I sold Workmate. A very similar thing happened, which we can also get into.
Well,
But
just a couple of things on that. That must, you know the one thing you know in sales when it goes silent for a long period of time, you know something's up, right? You just know,
yeah,
like
it's not
you.
normal.
It's not you. No, and you guys, because again, I've had this experience of running out of capital, and maybe there's money coming in, and you're like trying to be cool because you have to believe. You just have to believe because
Yeah.
you've got to believe. But the other thing makes me think. So if this worked out differently, I could be having Justin Timberlake on my podcast. Is that what you're saying?
We'll see if we can hook it up. Yeah. Yeah.
How long between that deal stopping and I would say you getting the wind in your sails again? Because you must have taken a moment to be like, holy shit, how quickly until you got the actual exit?
Well, again, again, you learn this from sales, right? Is that when you take a hit, you get a bit of a oof. You got to go right. You got to get your mindset
Let's
back. You
go.
get back on the horse and go again. And so we're like, right, we're not going to dwell on our misery here. We've got to get back on the horse. And so we got back on the horse. One of our investors had a contact, or with these guys out of India, and they moved pretty quickly. So it was only about, I think, about 2 months from the time that we
Okay.
that
Good
kind of
job.
deal fell over till we closed the other deal. So we actually moved quite quickly.
It's honestly, and I think I think for both of us having done the cold door knocking at the beginning, it does give you that skill set. Sure, it's going to hurt when you've got to cancel the party and cancel the thing, and you're getting an all cash deal, and you're going to be like, whoa, I get a lot of cash, and then it's just, wait, what? I don't have payroll for next month,
Yep.
like that. But you're right. Dwelling on it doesn't help. You just got to knock on the next door. It,
Exactly. Yep.
I teach sales today. I put something on LinkedIn the other day, and I got a bit of crap for it. I went, if you want more sales, do more sales. You're welcome. And people
Yeah.
are like, no, seriously, what do you actually do? I'm like, no, just literally
Yeah.
phone more people.
Do the work.
Do the
Do the
work.
work.
Literally. Just like call people.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just go and do it.
Yeah.
It
And I think it's like, to take a little sidetrack on that. Like, again, so I'm 47. I've been doing, like, geez, I was 18 when I started door to door sales. So that's pretty much 30 years of experience, right? And God, that makes me sound very, very old. Um, and I think that one of the interesting things is, we all know sales has changed a lot. It's changed a
yeah,
hell of a lot. The
huge amount.
tools that you have today with technology, with automation, with AI, even things like like LinkedIn Sales
For sure.
Navigator, we never had that. I mean, I had literally phone books when I started. I was literally going through phone books and calling, right? And and in those days, the only thing you did have was your work ethic, right? Just the pure grunt of just making those calls, and your ability to manage and control your attitude, and to be able to go, take 50 calls where you get told to piss off and then get up and go again. Like that ability to kind of get back on the horse is all we had. And I think one thing that I've noticed is, and I'm sounding like an old fogey now, but I speak to sales teams today and I work with startups today, and I see a lot of them that have never had to do that. They are so used to sitting behind a computer, right? Setting up their programmatic and algorithmic kind of outbound strategies and waiting for it to happen, right? And I think that there's almost like a lost art. There's a lost art. And I almost think you now have a competitive advantage because most companies and sales teams are sitting behind their AI outbound automation stuff, right? And so everyone sounds the same. Every message on LinkedIn sounds the same. And there's no originality. And I actually think if you're able to pick up the phone and call somebody or go and network at an event and meet somebody and shake their hand, get back to the old way that we used to sell back in the day, like I think you have an advantage. You're going to stand out from the rest of the guys that
It's
that
it's
just kind of sit behind their computer and let the system do the work.
Man, it's so true. Actually, this morning I get up pretty early to go run or whatever, and I do a little bit of cruiser on LinkedIn. There's a well-known sales guy, and he literally posted that. He's like, guys, greatest opportunity ever, automation. Don't, and he said, don't do the automation. When everyone else is doing the automation, you do
Yeah.
your stuff, and you'll stand out. And the other one, I'm a bit of a Hormozy fan. A bit less since I watched his
Yep.
I watched his Over the Dumb book launch, which was a bit nauseating, I must admit. So, but one of his phrases is one of the greatest skills in sales is to maintain a positive attitude despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary.
Yeah. Agree.
That ability to just, hey, keep going. So after you sold your
AdMax.
first
Yeah.
business, AdMax, tell me a little bit about Workmate, because look, you're in pretty rare air that you've exited twice. Did you rinse and repeat? I know it's a different business. Did you rinse and repeat the same formula? And obviously, you're going to know the next question I'm going to ask. Can you keep just rinse and repeating this formula? Can you do this 3, 4, 5
No.
times?
Man, we made so many mistakes. And I think so. So after selling AdMax, I had a year that I stayed on. After that, I left. I was then I was like, oh man, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah,
But I enjoyed building things. So what I ended up doing was I met a company, it's a SaaS company out of the US, that wanted to launch in Asia, still in the marketing technology space, a
yeah,
company called Lotame, and they were a data management platform that sort of collected audience data for publishers and enabled them to build targeting segments for advertisers. So you can target people with specific interests or specific demographic profiles. All pretty standard now. But so I met them, and they basically gave me the job, offered me a job to basically set up and run Asia for them. So that was working for somebody else, but I got to kind of like create the business in Asia. I was the first hire in Asia, out of Singapore, hired a team here, set up an office in Australia, set up an office in India, and sort of built that business and spent 2 years with them. But I actually started to realize that as an MD of Asia for a US tech company, you're basically a glorified sales guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. But coming from where I was kind of more entrepreneurial and building a company through to realizing that running Asia, you're pretty much a flag in the map for US companies. You don't get a lot of say in product roadmap. You don't
yeah.
get a lot of say in strategy. You just get what comes downstream. And I had lots of customers and opportunities that would come along. I'd be like, hey, if we add this feature, I can win this $1 million account. They'd be like, not a priority. And I'd be sitting there going, tearing my hair out, right? So I sort of got that entrepreneurial itch again. And literally, I was just looking at, so the guys that started the first company, AdMax, because I wasn't actually a founder. I was hired as the number 3, and then I took over as CEO, right? So the guys that founded that are quite well known in the tech and in the Thailand tech entrepreneur circle. And I was chatting to them, and they were like, "Hey, look, let's look for ideas that are working well overseas that we think could work well here in Southeast Asia." And actually, the first version of so I left Lotame and went to start Workmate. Now, when we first started Workmate, it was called Helpster. It was different, and the first idea was on-demand home services. So it was book a plumber, electrician, handyman for your home, right? But our approach was kind of different to a lot of others in the space. A lot of others in the space worked almost like a matchmaker where they would connect you with like another company, a
Oh, yeah,
vendor
yeah,
who would give you
yeah.
a quote, right? What we did is we decided to build our own network of workers. So we had freelance plumbers, electricians, handymen
But you
that would
weren't
join
you,
our app.
but you weren't paying these people. You were just saying to them, "Come to our app, and then we will find work for you." You didn't
No,
hire.
everything came through us. So we wanted to control the customer relationship because we
Oh,
looked
I
at
get
it and
it.
we went, hang on, if Ned comes on my app looking for a plumber and I can connect him to the plumber, well, now next time you're going to call that guy direct. You're not going to come back through my app again, right? So you lose the customer.
I
So
get
we said we want to maintain that customer relationship. So we basically did the billing, we did the
it.
quoting, we did everything. The guy
Got
would
it.
turn up. I mean, if you've ever used something like Helpling in Singapore, like the cleaners, it kind
Yeah,
of worked like that kind of model. They would turn up with a helps to t-shirt on and
I get it.
deliver it under the guise of us, but we would pay them on a per job basis. We launched that. We put $1 million of our own money into start. That was early 2016. Started ramping, and after about 6 months, went, oh crap, this ain't working. So we pivoted to go B2B. I've always done B2B. I knew B2B better. So we started going pitching businesses and saying, hey guys, we can be your on-demand facilities team. So our first customer was like Marriott Hotels in Thailand. We actually launched in Thailand where my co-founder was. Um, Tesco supermarkets. And it's kind of like if you need an aircon, if your aircon breaks, click this button, our team will be on site. So you don't have to have a full-time facilities team. And so when we had these meetings, the customers would say to us, I love this, but don't quote me for the job. Can you just send me the bodies? Because send me the manpower. Because if you send me the manpower, I have a manager who can tell them what to do. Because we have problems finding people. We have problems finding these blue collar workers.
I get it. Yep.
And that's when we sort of clicked and we went, hang on a second. Rather than providing a service, let's just provide the people. It simplifies it. I don't have to quote for the job. I can just pay a day rate. And that was when we kind of pivoted the model towards literally being a temporary labor platform. And that's kind of what ended up being Workmate. And then we changed the name to Workmate to fit that model better. And off we went. Yeah.
And in that regard, so you were selling people's, were they, so it was labor, but people were like, that's a plumber, that's an aircon guy. Did you have like a selection, or were they, how did that, because again, in my brain, everything's sales. You were selling skilled people, but how did you do it?
So we actually moved pretty quickly away from plumbers and electricians because what we found was that if you have skilled workers, it's very specialized. And when you're trying to build a marketplace, you need to be able to have maximum coverage and maximum utilization in the early days. So we actually moved more towards generic labor, which is you need a body. So one of our first customers was a e-commerce logistics company, and they need someone in the warehouse. They don't really care how they look, how they speak. I just need someone to move boxes in a warehouse. So we could go and aggregate a pool of 10, 15,000 people on the platform.
Wow.
And we knew that we could send that person to an event company that needed someone to move things around and set up things in an event. We could deploy them to a warehouse. We could deploy them in multiple different places. So our key verticals ended up being logistics and warehousing with warehouse workers. We did a lot in F&B and retail as well. But in F&B, it's like the guy to clear the tables or the guy to
Yeah,
wash the
sure.
floors, not the guy preparing food in the back of the restaurant, right? And the whole idea was essentially having sort of unskilled generic labor, but people we knew that would show up. So every worker was pre-screened. To become a worker on our
Yep.
platform, you had to come in for an interview and get verified in the early
Yep.
days. And we took care of everything, payments, the whole lot. So if you're a company, it's kind of like we used to say, it's grab for manpower. So you'd open up your app, you say, I need a waiter for this weekend. I'm paying this much money. 20 minutes later, boom, Ned's coming on Saturday. Here's his profile. Off you go. And so that was kind of the model. So basically, we're a temporary labor agency, but just using tech rather than the old school way of doing temporary labor.
So, in Melbourne, it's 1990. I was a backpacker. I saw an advert in a window of I can't remember, like a temporary labor cut must have played. It said, here's what you have to do if you want to earn some money. Come in here at 8 a.m. You will sit in our office between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. We get calls from factories from people who are sick, who haven't turned up. You don't need any skill apart from being able to take. I never forget what they told us. You need one skill. Take direction.
Yeah.
Somebody will tell you what to do, and you will do it. And if you do, and you
Yeah.
do it well, the next day you come in, we will give you something else to do. So I remember each day I used to be sent somewhere different, like a factory
Yeah.
or e-commerce place, or not e-commerce back then, or a warehouse. And I remember, and I can't remember. Honestly, I think I don't remember, $20 a day. And then I found out that these dudes were getting like $60 a day, and they were selling me for $20 a day. I'm like, wait, what? You get 40? And the guy was like, yeah, you wouldn't get this job anyway. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh shit, you're right. Okay, I'll take the 20.
There's an interesting, to get to sort of bring this back to entrepreneurship and sales, right? So I think I always found that when you're selling, right, particularly when you're selling a new product, you test, you try, like you go out, you try a pitch, and then you'll be like, oh crap, that didn't work. I need to adjust how I did that. And you keep like almost like pivoting, tacking until you find that vein that really takes and really resonates with people. It might be your messaging, your value proposition, whatever, right? And it was the same when we were building the business, because we had this idea. We said, right, let's go. Immediately kind of like don't spend months like trying to build the perfect product. Get to market with a very basic MVP, right? Originally it was being run on the back end with Excel spreadsheets, apart from a nice interface for the app, right? And test it. And then it's not working. Let's try this. And really it was a series of, I guess, over a period of the first 2 years, we just kept trying different things until it took off. So 2016, I think we did 40,000 in revenue. 2017, I think we did 110,000 in revenue. 2018, we did 3 million in revenue. That's after we pivoted to Manpower. 2019, we did 6 million. 2020, we did 12 million. 2021, we did 25 million, and then we sold in 2022.
Dude,
So
get out of town.
it took 2 years. It took 2 years of trying. Like even on the Manpower front, we tried cost per hire. Like you pay us every time you hire. We tried buying credits. Every hire we give you, you pay. And it wasn't until we realized that we needed to control the payroll, and we needed to actually, because our whole hypothesis was the problem we're solving is reliability. People don't show up. The only way to solve reliability is to know that they've been reliable in the past. You can't interview for it. So we need data on their attendance. So we need to get them to clock in and clock out on the app. How do we get them to clock in and clock out on the app? It needs to be tied to their pay. How do we tie it to their pay? Well, we need to control the payroll. So but that took us a couple of years to get to. And I think it was, sometimes when I speak to founders, they get so obsessed with the product they've built. They get married to the product. And what I always say to people is you've got to be married to solving the problem, right? If the product you built is not solving the problem for your customer, you have to be willing to throw it out the door and start again. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs being like, oh, but I have this beautiful product. And it's like, but if no one wants to use it and no one wants to pay you for it, and it's not solving a problem for that person, then it's a pile of shit. It ain't doing anything. It has no value. So I think that, we literally tossed the entire product out and built the tech again twice in that journey, in that Workmate journey.
Matt, oh my God, well, first of all, congrats on those numbers. That's amazing. And that shows, again, I sound like a complete Hormozy fanboy now, but he has a phrase, believe your customers. Don't believe yourself. Just believe your customers, right? If you build something and nobody wants to give you money for it, it's not beautiful. It's not great. It isn't any good, right?
We got this as well. We got the fastest growing company in Singapore in 2022.
There you go. And you see, that is your customers telling you, hey, look, because I love it. People are like, yeah, all my friends said it was a good idea. I'm like, how many of your friends gave you money? None. No, it's not a good idea. When somebody gives you their money, then it's a good idea. Until then, as you said, it's not a good idea.
But you also just got to keep trying. And I think that there was so many moments in that journey where so again, just on to kind of like talk through the struggle, right? I started it in 2016. My wife had started a company. So she started a dance studio that's pretty successful now in Singapore. She started that in 2014. I started Workmate in 2016, early January 2016, but we started working on it kind of mid 2015. My daughter was born in 2014. So basically we've got a young child living in Singapore. My wife's not making any money because she's starting this business. Um, I didn't pay myself anything for the first 2 years at Workmate. So really for 2 years, living in Singapore, which we know is not cheap,
Not cheap.
two, you know, two young kids at home. My wife's running a business. I'm running a business out of Thailand. So I was on a plane every Monday morning. I would fly to Bangkok. I'd come
Oof,
back every Thursday or Friday, right? So I
oof.
was commuting every week. And like what, like, oh, geez, maybe 18 months in, and we still just weren't cracking it. And we just weren't like, you get those moments where you're like, what the hell am I doing? You're on that flight on Monday morning. You're like, I'd much
Like,
rather be spending time with my kids, not making any money, burning through all my savings. Um, and it just, you have so many moments where you go, what the fuck am I doing? But the thing that I always used to go to is, do I still believe this is a problem that needs solving? Yes. Okay, it does. All right. If I believe it is a problem that needs solving, is it a problem that can be solved? Yes. And do I believe we could be the ones to solve it? Yes. Well, then keep fucking going. If any of those questions was a no, I would have quit. But as long as I used to keep checking myself. Whenever I had a bad day, I'd be like, do customers need this? And the clear answer was yes, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, I have problems with reliability. These workers don't show up. So like, fuck, can it be solved? Yes, of course it can. There must be a way. And I think I know the way. And I always used to think, if we don't solve it, somebody else will, right? So it is a solvable problem, but you know, and then I used to kind of come to the point where it's like I would rather fail than knowing that I gave it absolutely everything. And if we run out of money and it fails, so fucking be it. I gave it everything. I can live with that. But what I can't live with is if I quit and then I saw somebody else make it successful later on, I'd be like, fuck, that could have been me. And I think that was always the thing that kept me going. So I think that, as you and I both know, Ned, building companies is really fucking hard. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. And I really do believe that the difference between those that make it and those that don't are those that give up, right? If you can find a way to stay alive, no matter what, if you can find any way to stay alive and you keep at it for long enough, you will find success, right? And I think, again, as long as there's caveats to that, there's nuance, as long as you listen to the customer and keep trying to solve the customer problem, right? That you will succeed. And I think that again, that tenacity, that never giving up, that keeping on going, are all lessons that I learned from those original days knocking on
Well,
doors back in New Zealand.
I love it, man. Like, it's so true. All logic says you should not do a company. You should just take a 9 to 5. There's no logic that tells you you should start a
100%.
company. It doesn't make sense. But on the other side, once you've done it once or twice, whether it works or not, you realize, holy shit. Like, I think I'm infected with the startup entrepreneurial belief. And
I mean, man, yeah, I after getting out of a Workmate, I mean, I was totally burnt out. I was
I'm sure,
literally like
I'm sure.
clinically burnt out. I mean, I went for tests because I was just feeling really bad and I had these bad migraines. I went for tests with the
Oh
doctor and
no.
they were like, you've got pretty much your adrenal levels are at zero, right? So you've got what they call adrenal fatigue, and which is, essentially
Yep.
burnout. And I said, I'll never do it again, right? I'll never do it again. It's been 18 months now. I've been spending the last year helping my wife with her business. I mean, she's got, 50 staff, 1,500 students across 5 dance studios, multi-million-dollar revenue.
Amazing.
It's a decent operation. So I've been helping her out, just streamline operations and get things working a bit smoother. But after a year of it, I'm like, that itch is coming back. And I'm like, oh shit. I can kind of notice it. Like I'm starting to get that itch again. So I mean, now I'm doing I'm working with startups in an advisory and fractional way to kind of give
Excellent.
myself, to sort of scratch that itch without having to take the pressure of being a founder again. But I can just see myself going down that path again and going, oh shit, this is going to happen
No,
again, isn't it?
well, look, congrats on your wife. I know she runs that dance studio, all that jazz. Congrats on her doing that. And look, for the two of you having a young kid and both doing your own businesses, holy shit, man. I mean, that's no joke. That is no joke
Yeah.
whatsoever. To be able, but I have a frightening statistic for you, Matt. I'm afraid to tell you. You said you were 47. Is that correct?
Yeah.
the Harvard or Stanford study said that the most successful age for founders to do a startup is 48. So you are about to hit your
Let's go.
prime.
Let's go. But I think as well, Ned, like there are, like I said to myself, I'll never do it again. But then that other voice in the other shoulder said, but if you did do it again, oh man, you'd do it so much better than last time because you make so many mistakes, you learn so many lessons along the way that you just go, oh man, I wouldn't do that again, right? Um,
There's only
but yeah, man, I mean, it's definitely not for everybody. And I think, you know, if you want to be an entrepreneur because you think you can make lots of money, well, then you're deluded. Generally, you'll be better off if you take a job. You need to do it if you're the kind of, like, I just don't, like, I do not fit in a corporate business because I'm always going, oh crap, how about we do this and how about we do that and we could change this and there's an angle and then you just reach these roadblocks with these people who are like, no, the path is X and we must only do X, and I just get really frustrated. So I'm realizing that it's just I'm destined to kind of always build, and
well, I mean,
unfortunately I'm cursed. But
yeah, but you're
it'd be
cursed.
easier. It'd be easier if I could take a job and just sit in the job and be happy. You know,
100%.
that's yeah.
You know, you're cursed, but you've also shown that the curse works, that you've done it, you know, twice to be able, you know, you have kind of got out of it from there. I would also say that it is, you know, of course, financially, it's not always the right thing, but there is, like you say, it's not, to me, it's not so much about solving a problem. It just feels, I don't know what the right word is. Like so somebody, like when I finished Bamboo and it didn't work, sure, I needed cash. And so I had to do something. And there were some corporate jobs. And somebody interviewed me. He's like, what am I going to do with you, Ned? You're going to come in here, kick shit everywhere, scream and shout. And I know you could help, but you're going to drive people insane. I'm
Yeah,
like, yeah, probably.
yeah, probably.
But
Yeah.
that is true. Listen, Matt, we are coming up towards time. Man, what a cool journey you've been on. I mean, I think it's good that you've done both of those. Maybe just before we get to my two random questions, you said you're helping startups now. If the startups listening, can you give what couple of bits of advice? You know, one or two bits, because I know I met a VC once, and he said to me, "This is when I was on my first go," and I thought he was wrong. I said, he said, Ned, I only invest in startups. Excuse me, in founders who have tried, and whether they failed or succeeded, this has to be their second go. I remember thinking, oh, that's silly. Now I've been through it once. I totally see what he means. Like, I know, I'm sure I can still fuck shit up, but I know so much more. So, having been a guy that's had to go twice and done okay, and your wife's doing it, what quick takeaway little bits of advice would you tell any founders listening today on their first go?
Oh man, that's a hard one. Oh, geez, there's so many things. I think to reiterate what I kind of said before is that if you when you're going through, because you're going to have hundreds of tough times, you have to be prepared to go through the shit. You have to know that to get to that other end, you're going to have to go through some shit. Um, and I think that you've got to make sure that at your core, you deep down really believe in the problem you're trying to solve, and you believe that you have the team to do it. And I think if you do that and keep your eye on that prize, no matter how your product looks like, no matter what you have to change on your platform, your product, your markets, whatever, if you stay true to that and you just find a way to stay alive, you know, I think that to me is the key. The other more practical bit of advice is there's two bits of practical advice. One of them is pay real attention to the first 15 people that you hire, right? Because it's very hard to change the culture of the company when you're 80 to 100 people compared to when you're 5 to 10 people. Those first 5 to 10 people you hire, particularly your co-founders, are going to be the biggest driving determination of your success and also the level of success. If you build the right people around you and focus on people that can do the things well that you either don't like doing or aren't the best at doing, right? Complementary skill sets. If you really take your time, and the old adage, you know, hire slow, fire fast, is so true.
Yep.
Be very intentional about those first hires, because it really is the foundation of everything that will come after it. And the last bit is something that I ignored and kind of brushed off as not important, but it ended up being important when it comes to exits, is be very careful with your cap table. Keep
Yeah.
it clean. Keep
Oh
the
my
cap
God.
table clean. Don't have too many investors. Make sure that you don't dilute yourself too much. I diluted myself too much with Workmate. At the end of the day, when I was raising money, I always used to get this problem. They'd say, "Oh, you don't have a big enough share in the company, right?" And I'd be like, "Oh, but come on, I'm committed. Why does that matter?" But actually, when you go through it, now I understand why. So
Oh yeah.
be really like I didn't pay enough attention to the cap table. I was like, all money is money. Like bring some money in, and I think after it, I go, shit, I should have taken a little bit more care around being very intentional about what investors I let in and when and at what valuation.
Beautiful bits of advice, which 10 years ago when I started my company, I would have been like, yeah, whatever, dude. Now, 10 years later,
Yeah.
having seen them, I'm like, number one, hire people that fit your culture, correct? Number,
Well, the early people they're gonna be your culture. They're gonna build your culture. So you
100%.
make sure those early people like you're really careful. You get to know them as people, not just their resumes.
And
Yep.
people,
Yep.
people know I like to run. Your point about I like run a long way. You'll go through the shit. We have a phrase in ultra running. It is if you feel good, if you're running 100 miles or a long way, if you feel good, wait half an hour, you'll feel shit. And if you feel
Yeah.
shit, wait half an hour, you'll feel good. It's the same in startup land, right? You feel like a
Yeah.
hero today. You're like, oh my God, I'm a fucking genius because I did something. The next day, you're like, wait, I haven't got any money for payroll. What? Wait, what? How am I such an idiot? And that,
Yeah.
the ability to be in the shit and still go forward. And you're right on the cap table, man. Like, did I look? In the end, I didn't get out for anything anyway. But I remember one time was because there were some angels in. And I was trying to get like a small thing through, and I realized that I need like 27 signatures. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. And I didn't have much left. I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, what? Wait, how? And I remember sitting thinking in that moment, wait, what? How did I not see that? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it was just non-obvious because you're
Yeah.
right. At the time, I needed money. I was like, oh, sweet,
Yeah.
money, let's go.
Yeah.
Put the
Yeah.
money in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a while. Anyway, listen, absolute gold stuff. Been a pleasure chatting about sales, about startup. As you get to the peak of your abilities at 48, I wish you well. I wish you well on whether you choose to stay out, stay in. I wish your wife continued success. I ask all my guests I don't know if you listened to the end of the other podcast, but two questions, which I have become my standard questions. All right, number one, if you could live forever, would you? And why?
I did listen to your other podcast and I thought that I would get asked this. So I did do a bit of thinking about it. And the answer is no, I wouldn't. The reason being that I feel that like scarcity brings value. So if you could live forever, then the value of life would be less and the value of every day would be less. And I like the idea of thinking that knowing that I won't live forever means that I'm much more intentional about how I spend my time and where I spend my time. And the older you get, the more that you start to think about your mortality. You get very intentional about where you spend your energy, where you give your focus. And I think that if you lived forever, you kind of wouldn't give a shit. Each day would be just another day, right? And so I think there's something special about having the knowledge that you do have a limited time. So yeah, that's why.
So, Matt, beautiful. When I first asked this question, I remember I thought to myself, I'm like, yeah, let's go, live forever. Whoa, it'd be awesome. And I've asked this question 150, 200 times. And I think your answer summarizes it pretty beautifully. Like, you need purpose, you need a point. Like, if you just float around, like, wait, what? I can just keep doing this. So I have now, I initially was like, I'm going to live forever. It's going to be awesome. I'm like, no, like, it is what it is, and you do the best. And so the next question, in this world, well, you don't get to live forever, but imagine for the rest of your life, it would not affect your health. You could only eat one food and only that food for the rest of your life. What food is it and why?
No brainer, no brainer. Just nice, good steak. It's got to be a good steak forever.
Let's go. That is a good one. That is a good one. Well, Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. Good to chat about all things sales and startup. I wish you well on whatever your journey is.
Thanks, Ned. Appreciate
And
it.
we will catch up soon. Thanks for being on the show,
This has
man.
been fun. Thank you. Cheers, mate.
Take care. See ya.